My name is Alex Bryan, 26 years old, volunteer and outreach coordinator at the Greater Lansing Food Bank. I'm also owner, operator of Apollo Farms, I'm owner and farmer at Food and Field in Detroit. And this is my story. My story begins probably maybe before I was born. My grandpa's an apple farmer, was for his whole life and his father's life. So food and food industry farming run sort of within me and what I do. I grew up in Langsburg, which is maybe 15 minutes north east of Lansing. I never really spent a lot of time in Lansing. It was sort of a feeder community, feeder farm town. And so it wasn't a place I explored much. I knew about. I had family ties here. My parents lived in the area for a long time, moved away, and then came back and invested in the community. I went away to college, started cooking for myself, started asking questions, where does my food come from? Started going to local farmers market and exploring all of these different purple carrots, red carrots, white carrots, all of that. And then realizing I could grow these things for myself. I have space, I have land. The family has 130 acres, and why not? The family farm, the apple farm, went under in the mid-90s. 1,000-acre hand-picked apple orchard was lost. It's a lot of food that this area lost, a lot of local food. And so I think it's really important for me as I go forward with food and interacting with it to do so in an appropriate way, in a long-term way, a sustainable way. We've sort of divested away from thinking about tomorrow, thinking about the greater community that we exist in sort of for this today moment, whatever bottom line that may be. And that's forced a lot of small farms, small operations, local operations out of business. My passion really stems from this idea that we need to have a local sustainable community so that we can have a local sustainable world. Sharing food, working on food policy, all sort of stem from this idea of what I'm beginning to understand now as I further invest myself, what I would call food justice. We have a very basic set of needs, and food is one of those, and we don't take care of it real well. If I can put the seed in the ground and then cook the food and share that with people, that seems to me one of the more important things we can do individually or as a society is share food. So yeah, I started experimenting. I traveled around, finished school, working on a farm in New Zealand and subsequent farms in Colorado and New Hampshire. And after living in New Hampshire for about a year and a half, realized it was time to come home, back to Michigan, and started farming. Was able to find an AmeriCorps position at the Greater Lansing Food Bank, which is then transitioned into full-time work, which is nice. I have a full-time job to support my part-time hobby of farming, and hopefully I can transition that into a part-time job to support a full-time hobby.
Alex came to the Greater Lansing Food Bank as an AmeriCorps volunteer for a position we didn't know if we needed, and he quickly made that position a necessary position. We saw the value in it, and we have expanded and made a permanent position with other responsibilities for him. So in a sense, he created the position that he has just by his own initiative, skills, interest, and flexibility in being able to do lots of different kinds of things that we need to do. I think Alex is an inspiration to the Greater Lansing Food Bank because he takes on every task as if it's water off a duck's back. And he's in a position where he's being asked and interrupted constantly by different people to do different things, and he's pretty unflappable in that way.
How do you educate people in the community? I think you share what you have, you share your passion, whether it's food or it's housing or mental well-being, whatever your passion is, you share that with people, you interact with them. So the more we can interact with people, the more we can engage with them, the better off we'll be. And how you want to engage in that community is difficult or difficult to figure out, especially as a young person. Where do you fit? What's your role? I think it's important to engage in the community you exist, whether that be a small town, whether that be the state, or whether that be the region. I look at the Great Lakes region as a place I would like to improve. I think it's important to think about regions environmentally and the impact we can have on the environment, whether that be the water that then sprouts my seeds and grows my vegetables and puts the food on someone's plate, or the water that we drink or that the animals drink that we subsequently eat. We need to invest in that sort of regional community. So I find myself in Lansing. I have a community garden plot. I work with a alternative food bank that engages in the community. We do food rescue. We rescue food that would otherwise be thrown away. Almost 1 million pounds of food a year that we're saving. I read an interesting stat this morning done by an Australian food group. They said that a quarter of the first world's waste of food would feed the third world. Quarter. So that's all we have to do. Just cut our waste by a quarter and nobody's hungry. Those types of thoughts, those types of actions I'd really like to see in our community. And it starts in our region, it starts locally. And that's part of why I'd like to invest in here. The changes I make here, the changes somebody else makes in their community, all add up to a lot of good. Yeah, Michigan is home for me because I think two particular reasons or two particular philosophies. One, home has always been wherever I exist. I spent 6 months in the woods in California, living in a tent, working on a trail crew. If something went wrong, I didn't have anyone else to go to but my neighboring tent. They became my family, that became my home, and so it made a lot of sense to invest in that. I'm in Michigan now, and this is my home. My family is here, my blood family, and the family that I find and create here, and so it makes sense to invest in that, to live in the moment that I'm here now, make this the place that I want it to be. I think I choose it to be home because Michigan is struggling, and in that struggle you find human ingenuity, human spirit, and especially American ingenuity. I think we need to reinvest and refine that ingenuity that we have and maybe haven't used for a little while. You look at different blue-collar communities around the country or even around the world over the last 30 years. Those that were struggling 20 years ago have some very innovative solutions to the situations that we all face as a world now. You look at Oakland, for example. The community gardening that's been happening in Oakland has now positioned them to be a world leader as we approach. And I think similarly with Detroit, with Lansing, with this Rust Belt spreading all the way up in our region, I think can see that same resurgence. I see it now. I see it with the farms happening in Detroit. I see it with the access to land that we may have now that we didn't before to grow food, to push the bounds of what solutions can be to problems. In 10 years from now, I see myself